Simone Biles is, I think she's generally considered the greatest gymnast ever, like already, even before the 2020 games or now 2021 games. She won a bunch of gold medals in 2016, I think in 2012. I think she's won the most ever. And so she's the big star of really all of USA, not just USA gymnastics, but of the American Olympic teams. And so, of course, everyone was, really excited about, what she would do in 2021 in Tokyo. And so the team performance starts, right? She's performing with the whole USA gymnastics team. And she has this really off performance. The USA was heavily favored to win gold. And she had this really kind of off performance, and they got silver. And then after the performance, she withdrew. She announced that she was going to withdraw from the rest of the Olympics, or I don't know about the rest of the Olympics, but at least from the team events. And so she essentially quit. And USA got silver instead of gold, which they were expected to do. And then she withdrew from all the rest of her events except one, I think, where she got a bronze. And so it was just, it was this shocking turn of events for the USA gymnastics team and for the USA Olympics team in general. I mean, our biggest star, it'd be like if LeBron James got to Game 7 of the NBA Finals and then had a bad first quarter and then sort of withdrew for the next three quarters. That's, it's just kind of unheard of anywhere else in sport, unless there's an injury or something, which she didn't have an injury. And then so the reaction was, it sort of predictably broke down along gender lines, racial lines. The two big camps were, on the one hand, Simone Biles is this hero for, being brave enough to sort of protect her mental health and do what she needs to do for her to protect her body and that kind of thing. And then the more traditional sort of sports camp, which said you don't quit on your team, and she quit. And at best, it's maybe understandable if she didn't think she was going to help the team, but she certainly shouldn't be praised as like, as sort of this, having made this brave decision that's even more admirable than having competed for your team. Right. Those are kind of the two camps. And it's all been exaggerated, because there's like an obvious political or culture war valence to the whole thing. So both sides have been kind of magnified, right? Where you have let's be honest, people on the left who are just like tripping over themselves to heap praise on her as the bravest athlete since Muhammad Ali. And then on people who are generally on the right and are probably more male, they're mostly, let's be honest, mostly sort of dudes who like to watch sports, calling her a quitter and everything else. And so it got really nasty online, as you might expect. And you can imagine how it played out on Twitter. And
my God.
So that's where we are. And then, to complicate, I don't know about complicating it, but adding some extra culture war grist to the mill is the fact that she's black. And then so, she's a black woman. And then so there were a lot of articles about how this is sort of a typical example of, men wanting to control the bodies of black women. And
oh my God, that's ridiculous.
This is all slate.com, obviously.
Has abortion come into it yet? Like,
right. And then people on the sort of more on the, I don't know about if the right is the term, but the other camp is just like, what are you talking about? This is just someone who quit on their team. There's this stark contrast that you can draw between Simone Biles and this other famous gymnast from like the 80s or 90s or something. Her name was Carrie Strug. She was this really famous U.S. gymnast. And she had this like horribly sprained ankle. She sprained it during the something Olympics, I don't know. And the thought was that most people would have dropped out at that point, but she competed her final event and like helped the U.S. team win gold over, I don't know, Russia probably. And she's really famous for that, for having competed with this broken or sprained ankle or broken ankle or whatever it was.
That seems pretty brave to me.
Seems brave to you?
Well, I mean, so let's look at what's actually happening. So obviously, I don't give a about this stuff. Like, I think the Olympics
that should
is
always
the
be in the
dumbest.
background. That none of this matters.
Yeah, the dumbest. It's the dumbest thing ever. Who can run the furthest? It's like, wow, you ran the fastest. Like, I just don't care. It feels like childish games to me. But fine, some people like it. Yeah. Fair enough, right? But I mean, gymnastics is pretty impressive as far as Olympics goes. I mean, that is stuff that, like, you know, I couldn't even do a backwards, you know, roll without being dizzy, let alone a somersault or anything like that. I'd kill myself. So look, gymnastics, if there's ever an Olympic event, gymnastics seems to be one of them. And if you have on one hand somebody who has like an actual injury and then they're putting crazy force on their body because they're doing it for something bigger, this big ideal of like, I'm doing this for my country and I'm going to do it publicly to win kind of thing. After a long career of climbing a huge mountain of getting there, that kind of makes sense. The thing that bothers me about this is I think the two camps are ridiculous. Like, she's an absolute like disgrace, or she's a hero. I mean, I think the hero one is probably worse because she was there to compete and she didn't have an obvious injury, and now she's talking about how it's, what was it she said? She said it shows how strong a competitor and a person you are. It's like, well, it may show how strong a person you are, but it certainly doesn't show how strong a competitor you are because you didn't compete. You're not a strong competitor. You're someone who left your team at the end. You're probably the worst kind of competitor. You let the entire team get to the Olympics. The Olympics, and then you quit without an obvious injury. And then when you look at people who like put themselves into, you know, it's like that Bill Burr bit that he had, you know, when he talks about stunning and brave women on the front of magazines because they're like, they'll show fat women on magazines. So there's no other way of putting it, right? And you'd be like, oh, they're so brave, you know? And he goes, really? It's like, so if I see a fireman run into a burning building and rescue a baby and like breathe in a load of smoke in a burning building and no one else goes in, I can just go, hey buddy, you're like a fat actress. You know, it's like, what is bravery nowadays? Bravery nowadays is like quitting doing something or not being in shape. And I get their angle. Their angle is that there's not just, you know, there's the shame in losing, but then there's also a hell of a lot of shame in quitting. And you've got to have some level of balls to do that. So I do get it. But it feels a little, I think there's some of that in there, but 99% of it comes from the participation medal camp, you know, of like, well, maybe what is winning? Why should there be winners? Maybe we should it's the Hannah Gadsby, does comedy need to be funny? Do you need to win in a race to actually win? You know what I mean? Like, what was it I saw? There was a New York Times opinion piece by Lindsay Krause, I'm sure you know her, and it's titled Simone Biles doesn't need a gold medal to win. It's like, well, she does to win the Olympics though. Like, yeah, agreed, she doesn't to win, right? But to win it's like me dropping out of the you know, Olympics and being like, yeah, but I still won Tetris in the car against my brother on the way home, so I don't need a gold medal to win. It's like, no, but you were competing in the Olympics. What are you talking about? So it's like we're talking about this other version of winning that there is. It's like, well, you can still win. It's like, yeah, you can, but like, you know, you didn't win the Olympics. It's like Trump saying he won, basically. Do you know what I mean? It's like, well, you didn't win, did you? You didn't actually win, though. No matter what you can say about winning, you lost because you're not the president, right? So, did you really win? No, you may have won on some other levels, but you didn't win the presidency. Trump didn't win the presidency, and Simone Biles didn't win the Olympics. Trump and Simone Biles are both losers. Because they are. I get it, right? I get it. I get what they're saying, but they're wrong. She lost the Olympics and she won at some other competition no one gives a shit about, apart from a few people on the left who give a shit about. But most people watching the Olympics give a shit about the Olympics. So who cares?
It has a whiff of unfalsifiability about it, doesn't it? That if she had competed with her team, well, then she would have been brave and would have been a great competitor because she pushed through these really difficult mental challenges she was experiencing to be a part of her team and fight for Team USA. And yet, if she withdraws, she's also a brave and fierce competitor. So anytime, whether you do X or not X, you're still described as whatever. That's problematic because that can't be the case, right? You can't be described the same way as this brave and fierce competitor, whether you quit or don't quit. Like like the choice you make has to lead to different evaluations of you. So I do get that problem. You see what I'm saying?
I do see what you're saying, but I think that the only exception.
I mean, I'm agreeing with you because I'm just saying that, like, if she had competed and not done well, let's say, because I don't think she would have done well. She started off doing poorly.
Well, she didn't, did she? She got a silver, then a bronze. She started bad and got worse. Right?
She started poorly, and if she had continued competing with her team and continued doing poorly, well, I think there would have been a tendency to say, when we found out she was going through all of these mental issues, there would have been a tendency to say, oh, well, that was very brave of her to fight through those and compete with her team nonetheless, despite these having the twisties or whatever. And yet if she quits, we describe her in the same way. So it's sort of unfalsifiable in a way. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no matter what, she's stunning and brave, no matter what happens.
Exactly,
do you know why?
Exactly. No matter what.
It takes the value away from the title of being brave. And that's why there's such a hoo-ha about it, because this thing happened and there's two completely opposite reactions to it. And one of them makes sense, let's be honest. The one on the right makes more sense traditionally. I'm not on that side where I'll be like, she's a disappointment. I'll be like, that's got to be tough for her to quit. Like, can you imagine what she's going through? That sucks. Like, hey, I've quit stuff like that before. It's horrendous. Like, and you have to learn from it, and look, maybe you move your life in a different direction. Regardless, I've got empathy for her, and I don't hate her for it. What I do dislike is this is the best outcome ever, actually. I'm glad this happened. Yes, this shows the direction sport should go in fact. And you know what? So that the logic goes out the window is more likely to go out the window if it is a young black woman doing the thing. It just will be. Publicly, a young black woman doing something, you cannot get more of a logic twisting situation like, oh, she's female and she's black. In America, it has to be in America as well. It doesn't matter where else it happens. A young black female in America doing this, you can it doesn't matter what she does. It is glorious to the end. It doesn't matter what it is. I don't think this happens with black males at all. Like you said, if LeBron James did this, they'd be like, LeBron, you up. Jordan's better. Jordan goes down as the best of all time. But a young black female can do no wrong in the United States at all. That's what I think anyway. I'm sure.
So if Michael Phelps had Michael Phelps.
Yeah.
If he had withdrawn from his famous team relay where they won the gold. Clearly I'm so well versed in Olympic sports. How do you think?
Shit, I thought he was swimming.
Yeah, swimming. If he had withdrawn from his team swim relay,
I thought the relay was where you pass the thingy to each other.
Oh, I think there's a relay in swimming. Yeah, there's a relay because there's like we're
definitely qualified to be talking about this.
Well, this is so. I want to get to this in a minute, but this is what's so funny is that that 99% of the people criticizing Simone Biles are just out of shape dudes like us, just sitting around on their fat asses, eating Doritos with one hand, angrily taking a shit and typing on their phone with the other, typing mean comments on YouTube.
When we mentioned this,
it's true.
Yeah, when we first spoke about having this conversation yesterday, I was reading about Simone Biles and chatting to you while I was eating. Let me list this off: 2 Big Macs, 2 large fries, a large drink, and a McFlurry. And I'm there, like, weighing in on the Simone Biles situation. Literally,
it's researching what she did wrong. Oh, so that mutual friend of ours, whose name I won't mention in case you release this, mutual friend of ours from Sydney. We have this friend we went to high school with, and he went to the Olympics in the 1500, which is almost a mile. And the U.S. hadn't won any medal in this event since like the 60s or 70s. And this guy, who was just this absolute phenom from our high school, he'd gone to college and won all the national championships there, and he made the U.S. Olympic team. He runs the Olympics. He runs the 1500 in the Olympics, and he gets a silver medal. Amazing, right?
Incredible.
And so on the very last lap was when this friend of ours, Lionel was his name, kind of like turns on the afterburners and starts passing everyone, but he doesn't quite get past the final guy. And so our friend, we were watching it, and he says something. His first response, this guy from our hometown wins a silver medal, and his immediate response is like, "Well, if he should have kicked a little earlier. Kicked, I think is the term. He's like, he should have kicked 10 seconds earlier, and it would have had gold." And I remember at the time we were both sitting there sharing a box of Krispy Kreme donuts, just criticizing this friend of ours who'd worked his whole life to get a silver medal. And we were like he was like mid bite of a fat ass Krispy Kreme donut. It was so great. And it just perfectly. And the guy who won ended up testing positive for steroids. So it wasn't even his fault that he got silver instead of gold.
Oh my God. Well, it kind of was his fault. He should have just done steroids as well. Yeah. Oh God, I'm doing it again.
So I do agree with the left about Simone Biles. I think that it is braver to protect your mental health, to withdraw, to sort of stand up for your own bodily and mental integrity. Like that's way harder than just kind of continuing with the competition and just kind of muddling through it, which is what she would have done. She would have turned in subpar performances, but no one would have. I mean, they would have criticized her for not reaching her sort of peak, for not living up to her previous standard. But she wouldn't have faced this torrent of criticism like she has. But instead, she chose to withdraw, knowing that it would lead to half the country, the world, just like raking her over the coals. And that's, to me, that is way braver than just kind of going through the motions and doing the best you can, knowing it's going to probably pull your team down. Like, why is that not why shouldn't that be described as brave and in a way more impressive than the alternative?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that it's very difficult. Like I said at the beginning, I think it's a very difficult thing to do. And if, my only real emotion toward her is, fuck, I bet she feels like shit, regardless of what went down. She was either going to lose and have the stress of competing on her, and that sucks, or she's going to withdraw and have the stress of withdrawing on it, and she still lost, let's be honest, and that sucks, and then everyone goes after her for that, right? I mean, they both suck, and it's a horrible situation to be in. That doesn't really bother me, that. Fair enough. She's not a winner, though. She lost. She's not a winner, she's not a loser, she's a quitter. That's just the truth, right? That's what it is. Now, we can talk about the virtues of quitting and whether quitting's a good word to have, but she and her entire team went to the Olympics, and she left her team without her star player.
She's a quitter. That's how you sum her up.
In the silly argument of, is she a winner or a loser, which I think is silly. I think if you're going to talk about anything in the Olympics, what actually happened? She didn't show up. She quit. She quit the Olympics. Yeah, I wouldn't call her I wouldn't make that as a her entire character. No, she quit the Olympics. She didn't turn up. That's what happened. Everyone can argue forever about everything else. Who cares? But it's this whole she's a fucking loser, fuck her. That's ridiculous. And because it's the Olympics, who cares? And she's done more than anyone else has ever done. And, she's so brave and this is how you win. That's also ridiculous. No, the way you win the Olympics is by winning the Olympics. Isn't the ideal to get to the Olympics and win the gold medal while protecting your mental health?
I'm trying to imagine you watching one of those heartwarming videos where someone's running a race, and they break their ankle or something and fall over, and then one of the other competitors who was in the lead stops to help them up, and they trudge across the finish line together. I'm trying to imagine you watching one of those videos. I guess in your estimation, they're both just losers. They're both just fucking losers because they didn't win first place.
I do think that's a funny response to it. Yeah, they're just two fucking losers.
Okay, here's a better one. The guy
that's a nice video.
The guy that's a nice moment. There's the famous story of the Nazi dude that Hitler put in charge of Paris, and whenever the Allies got to wherever, whenever they were closing in, he was supposed to like blow up the Eiffel Tower and everything else, and he just didn't have it in him to do it, and he just didn't blow up all the sites in Paris. So, I guess in your eyes, he quit on his country.
Yeah, he's a fucking loser.
He's a loser too.
Do you know what would be funny though? What I really like, when the entire time you were telling me about the Heartwoman thing, about the guy who helps the person who broke their ankle get across the finish line, I just love to see like Usain Bolt run past them both. It's like, oh, this is what you get when you try to help. Let's not forget, it's the Olympics. So someone breaks their ankle, there's someone not far behind you who wants to win the Olympics. And that's the thing that I'm getting at is, look, we can talk about all this other shit and it's all very nice. And I care, I'm glad she's looking after her mental health. If that's what matters to her more than the Olympics, fair enough. But there's always going to be people where their mental health doesn't matter to them. All that matters is winning the Olympics. And those are the people that will win the Olympics.
So you're right. Obviously, people who are writing these articles about how Simone Biles she's actually the fiercest competitor and the champion, and she's a winner. Okay, fine. On this. So what they're doing is, in philosophy, they call this equivocation, right? They're changing the definition of a term mid-argument. They're changing the definition of winning mid-argument, right? You're saying,
yeah.
Normally when we talk about, did Simone Biles win the gold or did she win the Olympics? Obviously, we're defining win as meaning, did she beat all of her competitors in the event? And then they are changing the definition kind of mid-argument and saying, well, she did win, actually. And they're defining win in this broader, sort of more, I don't know, humanistic or whatever you want to call it, way. Right. And then so you don't like that. You don't like that they're kind of smuggling in this new definition of winning. But you seem to agree with the spirit of their argument, which is that, okay, yeah, she didn't technically run the race the fastest or her event, whatever they do on the horse thing. She didn't do that the best. But you seem to agree that she that what she did was, or maybe you don't agree. I think what she did was way more important than getting the gold. Yes, important.
Oh, this is where you and I disagree. You see, we've turned an Olympic event. We've turned it. No, I don't think that people watching that, right? I don't know. I don't think that like anyone watching the Olympics sees someone quit on the Olympics. I don't think all you're going to do is make a bunch of people not do the Olympics, or even worse, get to the final in competitions and quit. Like, what's important about it?
Why do you think people care about the Olympics so much and sports in general? Because they see sports as representational, right? It symbolizes all kinds of things. The reason soccer is or football is such a sort of powerful, it's such a powerful sport for so many. It's such a powerful event to watch. Is that it's not, when Ireland beats England, it's not just a random group of 10 or 20 guys beating a different random group of 10 or 20 guys at a game. It's representational. And that's what sports is to people. They're, and when it comes to the Olympics, they represent whatever, teamwork and the spirit of competition and like your ability to see, to see a task through and to achieve something. And so that's why people care so much about these events. And so what Simone Biles...
But she didn't see the task through. Like, she did the complete opposite of that.
I'm just saying that these events, though, they represent a lot of sort of deeper, a lot of more profound virtues that people care about. And so surely the virtue of like standing up for yourself and your sort of mental and physical integrity, that's important, right? And then so what Simone Biles did is that she used her event, or her, in this case, lack of event, to kind of send a message to people that it's okay to, to sort of protect yourself and protect your mental health. In her case,
I don't know why this I have such a gross reaction to this. It's like, you're there to run in a race. Don't bring all this other bull into it. Just get on with it. It's like, just get on. Just do the thing. We've all come here, and people have trained. Like, it's so hard to get to that point in the Olympics. And just imagine being one of her teammates. You've all been in it as a team forever. You've given up your youth, but you're doing it for this higher thing. And then you get there, and she makes like this semi-political statement and quits. You're like, well, actually, when I got there, I'm actually glad that I gave up my life, because at the last moment, Simone Biles decided, without telling any of us, to make a political statement and make this all about politics, especially today. Do you know what I'd love in the gymnastics? I'd love, instead of to win the gold, I'd love the entire world to have a political left-right debate, much continuing the Trump and Brexit and all that that's been going on forever. That's what I'd really like. Thanks, Simone. That's the message it sent to me, is that everything has to be political now. We can't even do some flips on a mat without it being like, well, actually, I'm going to stop men from controlling my body, which is what the argument has become. So, you are right that this stuff is symbolic, but it's brought all this bull into it about like running and jumping and flipping. We can't even flip. I cannot do a forward roll without an abortion debate. It's insane. Like, good for her. She did what she wants. Like, I feel bad. I feel bad for her. Like, I actually do feel bad for her, because I think this has got to be super difficult. But I don't think this is this big important move. I don't like giving I don't. That's why I had such an adverse reaction when you said, "Oh, this is important." I think that's what you said. Important. I'm like, "Oh, what are you talking? It's the Olympics. It's flipping. It's people flipping about." She was a woman flipping in the Olympics.
You don't think that in 1936, when Jesse Owens, the famous black U.S. track athlete, the Olympics were in Berlin, and the U.S. and other countries were competing against the Nazi regime and their athletes, and Hitler was at the Olympics, and then Jesse Owens, this black track athlete from the U.S., came and just like destroyed all of these Nazi athletes, and it was meant to be a statement.
Yeah, that's badass.
Repudiate. Yeah, that's badass, right? And that was
okay.
That was more than about.
So let's just break that down. Let's break that down. You are talking about a black athlete beating the worst person who's ever existed in most people's mind. Hitler, the guy who's trying to exterminate black people from the planet, essentially, is what his end game is. And then in front of everybody, he goes out there, and what does he do? He wins the Olympics, the competition they're there for. You're talking about, there's no Hitler in this story, and she didn't win. So what are we talking about? It's like she quit the thing she was doing. I understand that it's an analogy, and you're going to the obvious.
You're the Hitler.
I'm the Hitler.
White men are
I knew
white
it
men.
Was.
White men complaining about Simone Biles are the Hitler.
Oh my god.
We're the Hitler.
Yeah,
She's Jesse
well,
Owens.
that's
we're Hitler.
Yeah,